Christy's little dance. Hello, friends. Welcome back. Today I am joined by a couple of my friends, Jade and Christy, and we're going to be chatting through, it's kind of a broad topic, so it might go in a fair amount of directions, but sort of the expectations versus the realities of Booktube, whether it be time, how much you end up reading, how thoroughly you read, money, all those kinds of things. So I actually felt like this topic sort of came about because Christy did a video discussing why you were taking a break for a little while. And I will say, I love your videos. So there's a part of me selfishly that was like, no, bring them back. But you brought up a lot of great points in that. So do you want to kind of give some context as to what you discussed in your video?
Yeah, so this video went up, I think, like 3 months ago at that point, or at this point. And it was supposed to be like, I was like, oh, I'm just gonna take a little break. But I feel like the longer it's been, I'm enjoying not like doing videos and stuff. But basically, so I started BookTube like a year. Okay, well, I originally started a few years ago, did it for a few months and then stopped, and then restarted it a year ago. So obviously, I'm quite flaky because I keep starting and stopping. But um, basically, like when you're making videos, you want to have like stuff to talk about. And I feel like this is the common thing that every person who starts a new BookTube channel goes through. So, you only have so much time that you have in a day, in a week. So, to make more videos, you have to read more. And so I was finding myself falling into that trap of like, okay, I just have to read more. So I have more to talk about, didn't matter the quality. It was about quantity and trying to speed through books as quickly as possible. And it was just at a point where I'm like, okay, this is feeling less fun and more like a chore, more um, like an obligation. And I find myself, I wasn't picking up books that I would have liked to read more, ones that would have taken a longer time, um, more brain power to digest. So at that point, I was like, I want to enjoy what I'm reading. I don't just want to read a bunch of like 1 star, 2 star, 3 star books because they're easy to read. So that is why I stopped making videos for a bit to let myself reset. And since then, I've been taking it very slowly with my reading, like really diving deep into the books that I'm reading and reading it slowly because I don't feel like I'm on a time crunch. And it has been much more enjoyable that way.
And Jade, your reasons for why you haven't necessarily consistently been on BookTube are a little bit different. Of course, there will be some overlap with some of the points we get into, but do you want to chat through your reasons why it's sort of a push and pull for you?
Yeah. So I did BookTube for, I don't know, like 6 years, and I took a break starting about 3 years ago. I had some health stuff come up when I had my first kid. So I had already planned on taking a break because I obviously knew I was about to have a child. And while he was little, I knew I wanted to spend a lot of time with him and just wouldn't have the capacity to make videos, because something people underestimate is how much time it really takes to like film and edit videos. It varies person to person depending on like your style and what you do. But yeah, I knew I wasn't going to have the time. And then on top of that, when I had my child, I was hit with a health thing. And so I haven't been back to YouTube since then. And I do miss it, but it's just a lot to juggle. And right now, I'm still trying to find ways to like put reading back into my normal day to day, much less add on making videos about what I'm reading. Another thing that's been a little bit of a barrier to getting back into BookTube for me, and this is more of a me thing than anything, is I've always treated my YouTube channel as kind of like a diary of everything that I've read. And now that I have this big gap, there's definitely a part of me that's like, I need to catch up, like do like 3 videos for all of the years worth of books that I like read. Like I want to update everything in the time that I've been gone, which is kind of silly and unnecessary, but that's just something that I'm trying to like work through in myself, is like, I'm telling myself I don't need to, you know, recap the last 3 years of reading, but then I'm going to have this gap in my channel. But who really cares? Me, I care. That's the problem.
Well, I do think that mindset, though, even though you're telling yourself, well, I mean, it's just me, who cares? Nobody cares. But I think that's actually kind of a healthy idea, is to ensure that when you're coming to Booktube, you're doing it for reasons that are important to you, because everybody has different expectations or goals when they come to Booktube. So the idea of you treating it like a diary, and you would even do, I know a lot of people do vlogs, but I feel like some of yours were really in depth, where you would check in, and it was in a way for you to go back and see, especially if it was a book in a series, because you do like to read series all at once if you can, but also sometimes you have FOMO and you're like, I want to read this
what
particular
everybody else is reading.
Yeah, so it was nice for you to have that book diary to go back and see your thoughts. And I think that that's a good thing, and other people kind of resonate with that, because not everybody really likes Goodreads, and not everybody wants to keep track with a journal, and videos can be kind of a nice way. Plus, there is something kind of fun about going back and having, it sounds silly, but sort of a keepsake, if you will, or the memory of where you were at that time, being like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. I know it's a kind of a silly example, but one of my really old vlogs, I was going to Ireland, and at the beginning of the vlog, my dad came over to take us to the airport, and he got there super, super early. And then we went to breakfast and stuff like that. And it's just like, oh, you know, it's nice to have that in there. And I'm sure now that you have your son, to have a video where you're like, oh, that's where I was at that time, it's kind of nice. It's sort of sweet. So I don't know. I mean, if you decided I don't need to do it, then, you know, don't do it. But if it's something you'd want to do, I feel like it'd be nice to do it for yourself.
Yeah.
There's a few different talking points that we've already sort of touched on, but really quick, how long have you been on Booktube/watched Booktube? So both of you sort of answered this question, but how long did you watch before you decided I want to start making videos? And what was the catalyst to making videos and taking that next step? So Christy, what was it for you? Because you did kind of do it multiple times.
Yeah, I have been watching Booktube for a really, really long time, and I get a lot of my recommendations from Booktube. Like, honestly, watching Booktube was like one of my main hobbies, if you will, other than reading. So I was really, really into it. And the reason why I started my channel was because like I felt this FOMO, right? Of like, oh, like everyone has like all these like really cool discussions about books. I don't really have anyone to talk about books with in my real life, because even people who do read, we do read different things. And I wanted to read a lot fast. Like I wanted to read a lot more and a lot faster than they do, which is only like a few books a year. But therein also lies like another thing that became like an issue for me, is like just trying to get through things as quickly as possible. But yeah, basically I just wanted to discuss books with people, because that was like my main hobby. And it is like, once like you're on that side, you don't, like when you're on a viewer side, you don't realize like how much time and effort and everything goes into it. So once I transitioned into actually being a booktuber, I was like, oh my God, this is so much work. I mean, I was kind of expecting it, but not this much.
Yeah. Jade, what was it for you that made you, I mean, you mentioned that you liked having it as a record for yourself, but what were some other things that made you want to make a channel?
Yeah. So basically I went to undergrad and grad school, and I didn't get to read as much as I did when I was like in high school. I was a big reader growing up. And once I got my first like big girl job after grad school, I all of a sudden had like way more time on my hands, which is crazy to think about because now I don't have that much time on my hands. But at the time I was like, oh, I should start reading again because I used to read. And that's when I discovered Booktube. Like I didn't know that it was actually No, first I discovered book blogs. And I don't know if you guys know this, but I started out with a book blog. And part of it was I wanted to get back into reading, but I also wanted to learn a new skill, like how to make a website. So I did all of that. I started book blogging, and then I found Booktube, and I was like, this is way more fun and interesting. Like, I started watching, and I found some channels that I really like, people who were funny, and just hearing about all the new books that were coming. It's just an easier way for me to ingest information than book blogging was, and to get a better sense of like people's personalities and reading tastes. So then it didn't take very long, probably like 3 months of watching Booktube. And then I was like, I think I want to share my opinions in book format, in video format. So, and it was also like a new skill. Like I didn't know anything about filming or editing and how to do all that stuff. So it still kind of provided my need to like want to learn something new, something kind of like techie. I don't know, maybe people don't think making videos is techie, but it was techie for me because I didn't know anything about like video equipment and editing files and things like that. So that's kind of how I got into it. It didn't take me very long for me to want to jump in. I was starting to read more as I was watching more Booktube, and then I had all these opinions that I wanted to share. So then I decided to make a channel.
Well, it's very different from the things like TV shows where you can easily, you know, a big one that people watch now is something like Love is Blind. And then so many people see it, or Game of Thrones when it was coming out. There's a decent chance you know somebody where you're like, oh my gosh, you've seen this show. But books, it's so different because like you were saying, Christy, you'll have some people that read, but they'll read completely different things. There's a lot of people that read a lot of self-help books, which there's nothing wrong with. But even the difference between self-help and general fiction or genre fiction, it's like there's not really the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a lot harder to find that. And then there is that feeling like you were talking about, Jade, where you had more time to read when you were a kid.
Mm-hmm.
When you're a kid, there's just something about it that is the ultimate like fun experience where you feel transported, and the escapism aspect. I do think as you get older, escapism is still a part of reading, but there are so many other elements that go into why we love certain books. But you feel like more inclined to have a discussion, I think, when you get older. I think as a kid, there's something sort of special about it being something you connect with in isolation because you're still kind of finding yourself. But then as you get older, you're like, well, I feel pretty decently like I know myself. Now I kind of want to share thoughts and you want to have those connections with other people. Really quick, just because you mentioned the tech side of things, just because I don't consider myself techie at all. And I would think it would be interesting for people that don't know how different maybe all three of us approach filming and editing. So Jade, what equipment do you use when you do film videos?
I have a Canon. I have a camera. It's been so long, I don't remember what it is. It's not like a Rebel, it's something else. But I got one that has like, you can change I did a bunch of research before I bought this stuff, but it was a long time ago. But you can change the lens on it and it does like different things. And I got a mic for it too, like a boom mic that goes on it. And then I do my editing on an Apple, a MacBook Pro on Final Cut Pro. I tried to switch to a Windows editing system and I couldn't get the hang of it. So I'm stuck with the Apple stuff.
I do think once you get used to a certain kind, it's like
it's hard.
It's not even the same thing, even though you're like, it's editing software. How different can it be? It feels so, unless you really know your stuff, but I don't. Yeah. I know what I'm accustomed to.
And even like designing thumbnails and stuff, like I had to figure out the pixel sizes and like doing like layered photos, and like I learned how to use Canva. Not that it's hard to use, but I just had never used it before, and like I had to figure out all these. And even with the videos, like I figured out different layering and like all kinds of stuff that I didn't know anything about, but I had to teach myself.
Certain editing programs they are so much better than others, because some of you are like, how do I just insert some text? I don't even know how to insert text. And other ones, you have so much available that you don't know how to do even the simplest thing because you can do so much.
Yeah.
Christy, what do you use?
So when I first started, back in like 2019, I did get a camera because I'm like, I want to have like nice quality images. So I did buy a camera before I even started. And then that's also like another reason why I wanted to start again after I quit. I was like, oh, I already have this camera. Like I'm already set. Like might as well start again, right? Um, but I do also use just like a free editing program. But my issue was that I had a computer that was so crappy. It was like a 10-year-old plus computer that had the most outdated graphics card. So while I'm editing, the video is like super choppy, super hard to watch. So a lot of times, like, and it would take me hours to render the video, and I wouldn't be able to watch it back properly until I uploaded it to YouTube and I watched it like while it was still private. And then at that time, I was like, oh, there's this part that, it's like a weird pause that I want to cut out, or like, and I'm a really big perfectionist about this kind of stuff. So it's
Me
like
too.
if I have like a picture of a book beside me, I want it to like show up and not show up at the exact like at a very specific time. So sometimes I'd be like, I'm done talking about the book, but if the picture is still up, and I'm like, no, I cannot have that. So that I have to go back and edit it out and then re-render it and export it and all. And it was
That
a
sounds like
pain.
such a pain.
So long. Yeah.
I do have like an intense editing process myself. I can render and like do it in real time. I don't have to wait till I upload it. But I have a tendency to cut out like all of my breaths. Not a tendency. I cut out all of my breaths, and it makes the video a little bit choppy. But to me, it like shortens it a lot because all your breaths add up over time, you know? And so, I mean, some people don't like the editing style. They think it like makes it sound funny, but I like it. So that's why I do it. But it takes me a long time. I go through 4 rounds before I get to the end of my edit. Like I do a rough cut, and then I do a visual sound cut, and then I go and clean up the edges between the like breaths, and then I do all my effects. And I probably watch it again. Like I watch it so many times, but that's again me being like a perfectionist, and just like I like my videos to look a certain way, and I put a lot of time into them. Like I said, that's very personal. Not every booktuber or YouTuber is going to put that much effort or needs to put that much effort into each of their videos either.
Yeah, I think you and I have a similar style, Jade, because I think I got a lot of advice from you about like editing, and I do like that like choppy, fast kind of style, which if I was just sitting in front of a camera and talking just like this, I would not achieve because I stumble over my words like all the time. So I keep the pauses between sentences short, cut out all the like ums and stuff,
Yeah,
which all adds up.
I think that you can also kind of like look at it 2 ways. This is, I don't know, booktuber advice or YouTuber advice, but you can either prep more on the front end and have a cleaner film, and then you don't have to edit as much, or you go into it. Like I like to go into it with just like bullet points, but not really having thought too much about what I'm going to say, which ends up with a lot of rambling and talking in circles. And then I have to go edit that stuff. But my end product for me ends up being more natural sounding when I go in just kind of rambly and then clean it up, versus if you go in more prepped, you don't have to do as much cleanup or editing. It's just whatever you want to do.
I can't do scripted. I feel like it comes across so inauthentic, and it just feels like I'm reading something. I prefer the more casual, having a conversation like if I were to talk to either of you or any of our other friends. But I do want to add a couple of things. Like both of you have said, not everybody approaches things the same way, and not everybody needs cameras. I still to this day don't film on a camera. I film on a phone and I edit on a phone, which I remember Jade,
you still edit on a phone.
I still edit on a phone. Yeah.
And you really can't tell. Like it looks
not at all.
Such good quality, and like the final product, it just like looks like professional.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's very nice of you. I've always been a little jealous of the ability to sort of like blur the background. Not quite like you've got yours right now, Christy, but you know what I mean? That really beautiful amount of just a tiny bit blurring the background.
With the lights in the background, that's like, just like blurred.
Yes. Yeah. But I film on, so this is, I won't go too into detail, but there was a time that I needed a new phone. So I got a new phone and then they never delivered it. So then I had to get another phone, and because the one I had, everything I own, pretty much like shoes, bags, whatever, I use them until I
They
cannot
fall
use them
apart.
anymore. Yeah. So I had this phone that was completely missing like the top chunk. I can't believe it even still worked. Like the whole, you could see into the phone for like the top of it. And anyway, so then they didn't send me the phone. So I was like, okay, you guys never sent it. Got the runaround, finally got a phone. And then way later, they sent the one that they said they had sent months before. So then I had two, and I was like, well, I'll have one of these be a filming phone. And that's how I kind of started using one of them to film. And I used to just use like the iMovie app, which is not very good, but then eventually got a different app. And that's where I do all my editing to this day. I don't edit on a computer, which
I
everybody
don't know
thinks
how
is
you can do it on a phone. Like even when you put like pictures of books and stuff. Like how do you do the layering? I don't know. I couldn't do it on a phone. I need more screen space.
the app I use is super
Makes it
easy.
easy.
Yeah, you just click overlay and then you
Mhm.
just select any of your photos, and it's
Yeah.
all like touch. So
Yeah.
it's really quite easy, which is nice. Occasionally the app has weird malfunctions. I wanted to cry because there was a week where every single time I would go to export a video, it would just crash and it didn't need to be updated. The phone didn't need to be updated. So I had to go through and I had to uninstall the app and then reinstall it, which was so aggravating because I had already spent a ton of time editing and finishing a video. And I was like, no, it's at those kinds of tech issues that
Yeah.
you can't really do anything about. And you're just like, I just have to deal with this. And nobody's going to know on the end, and nobody cares, right?
Right.
I'm very much like, I have a schedule. This is when I upload. I don't want to stop uploading when I say
Right.
I'm going to upload. So I do find that can be very frustrating. I lose my mind if something happens with the audio is weird, or I'm just like, no, I get really upset. And that's part of why I've always been nervous to get a camera, because the amount of times I've seen somebody be like, well, my camera died, so now I'm having to film, whatever, or they've redone videos because their camera died and they didn't know, or they
Or
didn't
their
realize the
mic wasn't
audio.
on.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I don't want to deal with
so
that.
many times to me.
Yeah, I can't handle, because when both of you know, but Jade, I think you especially know, when I do things, I do not do them by halves. I am a bulk person. I bulk read, I bulk film, I do everything all at once. So if I'm going to sit to film, I'm going to film a lot. And there was one time I filmed, I want to say it was like 5 videos, and only to find out the audio was messed up on all of them. And I was like, no, I was so upset. And that day I was like, I'm going to Best Buy. I'm getting a stupid new microphone. It better be the microphone that's the problem. And it was. But anyway, the tech issue stuff can be really aggravating. And this actually kind of leads into another point, which, Christy, you actually did touch on this, and I think you did as well, Jade. I wrote, does recording and editing ultimately take away from reading time, or does the accountability aspect outweigh those things? Because a lot of people say part of why they start channels and part of why they get into doing Booktube is because they want the accountability element. If they're doing a TBR and they're putting it up online, they're like, okay, this is going to really force me to remember, these are the books I said I'm going to read. I got to read them. And then at the end of the month, then I have to do my wrap up. And they have that sort of propels them to read when they might otherwise want to just sit on the couch or play video games or watch TV or whatever. So I have found that, Christy, I think you really hit this point, but you think like, oh, editing doesn't take that long. Filming's not going to take that long. If the video is like 12 minutes, then what? That's like 15 minutes of filming, and then you edit it really fast and then you upload it and you're done, and you're like, no. So I'm just curious your thoughts on this topic. And Christy, since you kind of started it, I'll let you go ahead and expand on it.
Okay, so just to give everyone like an idea of how long recording and editing would take for me, if I have a 15-minute video, the raw footage is like an hour long, because I also don't like do any scripting. So I'm just sitting in front of my camera. I'm like, okay, let's go. So I'm thinking about stuff to say on the fly, which ends up having a lot of footage of me just sitting there staring into blank space, like trying to think of how to word my next sentence. Which, just as an aside, I've mentioned this before, but Elle, that's why I love your videos so much, because when I watch your videos, I'm like, does she even pause? Like, there are no cuts. And it's just amazing how you can like keep going.
I feel like that's very nice to hear, because there's a part of me that just hears my mom being like, you can talk a lot, and like thinking of it as a negative, and then always being like, oh, I'm too chatty. So
No,
that
that's
is
what I
very
love.
sweet.
That's what I love about your videos. And like I just admire your filming style so much. But in terms of and then when it comes to editing, I think the longest time it took me to edit a video was like 8 hours. 8 hours straight. It was nuts. I was like, oh my God, this literally took me a whole work day to it's like a full work shift.
Can I guess? Is it one of the videos where you have all the characters and you're talking about all the characters, so you had to insert all the individual? Is it one of those?
It wasn't that one. It was actually a tier ranking one.
Okay.
Yeah, but basically anyone's that take a lot of editing and just like moving things around and all that stuff. But that other one took a long time too.
I do want to interject for just a second and say how I approach tier ranking videos, because I always figure out the tier ranking ahead of time. That's my version of like scripting, because I don't script what I'm going to say, but I do plan on where I'm going to put things, and then I walk through within the video why I put things where I put things. But then I'll edit the video, the regular footage, and then however long that video is, if it's like 20 minutes long, then I'll put it on 2x speed, and I'll pull up the tier ranker on my computer, and I'll do the screen record, and then I'll start recording right when I press play on my 2x speed video, and then that way I can move everything pretty quick. Then I send that to my phone, and then I just double so if it was 2x speed, meaning it was twice as fast for the regular video, I put it back to normal, and then for the tier ranker itself, I make it at half speed, and then it lines up.
Yeah, that's actually so smart.
Unless I'm doing it where sometimes I'll like, depending on what I'm doing, I want the visual to be bigger than what the tier ranker would have it be. So in those instances, I'll insert like every individual thing. So for like my Spy Family character tier ranking, I found a bunch of images for each character, and they would like pop up on the screen really big for it. So sometimes I do things a little extra and it takes forever. But
and you do all of that on your phone?
Yeah.
I'm just so mind blown. I can't get over it.
I can't. It would take me so long. The amount of times that I can tell you where I was walking our dog, talking to Sean, being like, I don't know how people do it on a computer. Like I'm so used to it on my phone. If I were to try to switch, I don't think I could put out the amount of videos that I put out. I couldn't do it. It would take.
I feel like I could maybe do it on an iPad, but on a phone, I can't.
Is it because it's small? I don't really know why.
It's small. Yeah, and like, how do you get such precise? I mean, I guess you don't have to cut as much as Chrissy and I do, but how do you like get it so precisely exactly where you want?
Stretch the file until it's the like, you know, when you squeeze the file so that it goes I don't know how to explain this because I'm not a techie person, but I just stretch it to its like fullest, and then I'll just barely move it, and then I'll check it, and then if it's still not good, I'll just barely move it until it's good. And it doesn't usually take very long. It's
because
very easy.
Like one cut per video. Yeah. Me and Jason, I'm like,
I don't need one cut per video. Just to be clear, I do stumble. I think I actually used to film a lot different than I do now. I was going to
ask if you still do. Okay, go ahead.
So yeah, Jade knows because we used to chat with each other about differences. I used to say whatever thought I had, and then press stop on the recording, and then start recording again and film the next thought. So that did mean I'd have to trim the edges a lot because I'd end up with, let's say 25 thoughts for something, and then I have to trim every individual
one. And then
one.
Immediately after she filmed a thought, if she knew it wasn't good, she would just delete it. So she would wouldn't have to go through and edit it. Yeah. So only the good takes were there, and then she just put them all together.
Okay.
That's pretty
but now I just film. I try as much as possible just getting one. If I have to stop, I don't know what it was, but before if I messed up, I had to stop. Like I had to press the stop button. Now I'm like, if I mess up, I just start the sentence again or wherever, middle of the sentence, whatever. But it was really time consuming, but I just couldn't. It's like I had to get it all good. And if I messed up, I had to stop. And now not so much. The only exception is when I start videos. If I stumble at the beginning, I'm like, nope. And I have to keep doing it. So I'll end up with like 10 files where it's like 7 seconds long, and then one that's like a half an hour. And I'm like, that's the one. That's the one I need to edit. And then I will say one really unfortunate downside for me when filming, which I've mentioned before, but my air conditioning unit, I don't understand why the microphone, because it's the same microphone, this one. I don't know why it picks up the air conditioning when I'm filming regular videos and not these, but I'm grateful it doesn't pick it up on these. But regular videos, because my AC unit's right there, I have to turn the AC off when I film. And because I bulk film, yeah, especially with like the lights and stuff. And I hate filming days in the summer because I tend to bulk film, but I hate it because I pretty much every day that I'm going to film feel like I'm going to pass out because it's like, it's so hot and I just am like the lights shining on in your eyes for so long and stuff. And I just get I don't dislike filming, like the literal act of sitting down and talking about books. That's the whole reason we do it. But yeah, I hate all the other parts. But then when the weather's nice, I'll have like a blanket because then I make sure the heater's off, which isn't a big deal for me at all because I'm always in giant sweatshirts. And so then I'm like, it's nice now. I can bulk film so much and I'm not. The headache is only because of the lights in my eyes.
I don't know how you can film that many. Like, I think 2 is my max. And part of it is what Christy was saying, like the raw footage is like 40 minutes to an hour per video, even if it only ends up being 15 minutes after I'm done editing. But like 2 hours of filming and I'm done, especially because, I work a full like normal job. And then usually I'll either film in the evenings or when I did, or on the weekends. But yeah, like 2 videos and I'm tired.
I think that's why, because when I first started, I didn't really answer the question about how long you've been on Booktube or watched it. When I started, there was a while where I was putting up videos every day. And that was when I was teaching private violin lessons as well. So it was like, I don't know why, I was working full time and I was putting up videos every day. But I definitely think they were quicker types of videos, like a quick little review. And I definitely think I take more time now for my videos than I did then. Because I don't know, now that I have this as a job, I want to put in as much as possible to ensure that people really feel like they're getting the most out of it. I wouldn't want to still film in the way I did then when it was just like something I threw together really fast before I had to leave to go teach a student or something. But I do think that's part of why the process has changed because I've done it so much for so long. But yeah, it's definitely gotten easier. Sorry, Sean just got home. He's walking over there. Luna, you'll probably see her tail. Let's see if she ends up going through. Oh, you might have
I heard her.
Yeah.
I heard it.
Anyway, so I think the answer to this question, if we're to be upfront, is just it definitely takes away from reading time.
I have something else I want to add to this. Like, yes, it definitely does take away from reading time. I don't really have much of that whole accountability aspect. Like that doesn't really weigh because of the way I treated my channel. It was just like whatever I'm reading is what I talk about. And I also have always been on like for Booktube on the lower end of reading per month or whatever, like 4 to 5 books is generally what I would read in a month. But what I wanted to talk about was something Elle mentioned at the beginning, my book diary videos. So sometimes I do videos or like vlogs too. So book diaries just tend to be more spoilery for me. But anything that I'm filming while I'm reading, I struggle with that, like deciding whether or not I want to do that. Like in the end, I always end up loving the product because either it's a vlog and I get like snippets of my day, or like a lot of times I'll vlog while I'm camping. So I get like the memories from that. So I do really enjoy that. But having to stop reading, like put my book down and film my thoughts, it interrupts that like momentum you get going. And sometimes I struggle with, do I actually want to do that? Or I just want to like sit and read the whole thing without like stopping to record every hour or whatever. So when you're reading and filming at the same time, it does like kind of get in the way of your momentum and just like getting in the groove of reading. And so that's a little frustrating, but when I do it, I always love the end product, and they're really hard to edit. Like they take a long time to edit because there's just so much extra stuff you have to cut out. But in the end, I usually end up liking what I come up with. And so it's kind of like a push and pull. Like I want to do it, but I also know that it's going to take a lot of time and kind of like take away from my reading experience just a little bit.
Yeah, Christy, do you find that that's the case for you as well? Because you've done spoilery, videos before.
So I have a different problem when it comes to this is okay, I know this is so stupid and no one actually cares, but like because the fact that these videos are going on the internet and the internet is forever, I'm like, I want to look nice, when I'm on the camera.
But for
So a lot of
vlogs,
times,
nobody cares for vlogs. I don't know.
right, but
I have
a lot
lower
of times,
standards for
like
vlogs.
when a lot of times when I'm yeah, but like see, that's the thing. Like when I watch other people's videos and they're doing vlogs and they have like no makeup, I'm like, I don't care. Like, but I'm like, I care for me.
I think that
So
makes
like
sense.
a lot of times when I'm reading, it's like, I just showered, I have no makeup, I just finished working out, I'm all sweaty and gross. I'm like, I don't want to get in front of a camera at this time to do like a thought check, like do an update. But then by the time but that's another reason why I wanted to do the channel is so I could have these kind of like records and have my live time reactions to books so I can later watch them and kind of experience that all over again. But of course I can't do that if I'm like, oh, I gotta wait until I look nice before I whip out the camera and do a video because then like could do a clip because then the like thought is not as fresh anymore.
Yeah.
And like one of my favorite things to see um is like people live reacting to something that they just read, like some like really shocking spoiler part or something. And I'm like, I can't fake that like if I'm filming it at a later time.
I have way too many videos of me crying on camera. Freaking Stormlight videos.
So there are times where, there are people who they don't care at all. They'll pull it out. It doesn't matter if it's shaky or it's like the camera falls or whatever. But then there are times where, there was there's something like slightly production value, we'll say, put into it where you happen to put it at like just the right angle. The
Or like
lighting
when
still
people were
happens to be
vlogging
good.
and they like filmed the door open, they had to go and like set the camera
Yeah,
open
exactly.
the door and then they walk
Waking up.
Yeah,
right.
like
I was gonna
that's
say it's
not
like
real.
morning routine videos where they get up and it's like their hair just happens.
It's not like
to
they
be
went to bed with the
perfect
camera
and-
next to them.
Yeah. So I don't think you're alone, Christy. And I think it's really
as much as I'm
honest.
teasing you, like I agree. I read mostly at bedtime, and that's definitely not a time I want to be giving live reading updates when I'm like in bed with the lights off.
Yeah, there is something that's like kind of fun, like you were saying, Jade, about the end product where you insert these cute little montages of reading and then you put nice music behind it and stuff. But for me, when I'm sitting and reading, I'm like, it's pretty boring. I'm just like sitting in a chair. You know what I mean? There's not much to see that's engaging or interesting. But there are people that also do really nice, like clean with me style videos. And those, I enjoyed those to watch because it kind of makes me feel like I should get up and clean, But then the idea of filming it, it's like, but I would rather just clean. I don't want to sit and take the time to set up a camera and show and make sure I'm not wearing, because I'm always wearing bike shorts all the time. So I'm like, but then I don't really want to wear shorts that short on camera, but I don't want to change into pants, it's just all those extra details. But also, Christy, to give you additional credit, I don't think it's weird or stupid or anything. Like you're saying, it feels like it's forever. But on top of that, you never know who's going to see your video and who's going to say something really mean and cruel. And most people on Booktube are super nice, but it's really understandable that you wouldn't want. I mean, I remember getting an email of somebody saying that I'm catfishing because I wear makeup in my videos. And I was like,
I remember.
I was like, that's not really, I don't think that's the best use of that word, given the other context.
People say strange things.
Yeah, and I'm like, but you took the time to email me, like, why would you do that? I just feel like that's just sad person. But I was just like, okay, whatever. But I also just think that people like to present a certain version that they feel the most comfortable and confident. And if that's different from one person to the next, it's not a bad thing. I think everybody approaches because for me, I've always felt more comfortable. This is kind of a weird aside, but I always feel way more comfortable if I'm in giant sweatshirts and I like doing fun things with my hair or like fun things with makeup, but I don't necessarily want to do a whole lot. Here, I don't even really like, as much as possible, I'm like, how can I get the camera so that you pretty much always just see this and that's it? Because that's what makes me feel comfortable. I don't want any additional things tied in. I just like, I'm a person talking about books. That's what I want the focus to be. I don't really want the focus to be on anything else. So that's how I feel comfortable. And I also feel comfortable just in day-to-day life. If I'm going to go out and do stuff, it's still the same. I mean, Jade, I've been at your house before. It is just, this is how I dress and how I feel comfortable.
Right.
But other people feel comfortable completely different ways. Like I was jokingly saying my mom teases me for like talking a lot. My mom is very different in that she loves like tank tops and shorts, and like she dresses in ways that I'm like, that's not how I want to dress for myself, but I don't care that she dresses that way and likes to present herself the way she does versus how I do. It's just a matter of what you're comfortable with. I think it's, and I really am happy that you said that, because I think a lot of people, it's very, very honest and real. I think it's the case for a lot of people. It's certainly the case for me. I don't want to like just get out of bed, roll out of bed, and then sit and film. I don't want to do that. So
Yeah.
I think it's very realistic. But actually, that ties into another prompt. What were your expectations going into Booktube? So I think this is a good tie-in, because when you watch those types of videos and you see the people that are doing the vlogs and they're doing the live reactions and those sorts of things, there's an expectation of like, oh, this is going to be like really easy to film and do. But then you go to set up your camera and it's like totally dark because it's nighttime. You're like, what if I turn on this lamp? And then it's like really orange and you look weird. And your front facing camera doesn't look right. And you're like, well, and then there's all these additional factors. But more than that, did you have expectations as to how much you thought you were going to read, how long you thought it would take to film, all those sorts of things, or whatever else that I didn't even mention that you want to say? So Jade, I'll let you kick it off with this one.
I didn't really go into it with a lot of expectations, other than I definitely thought that it was going to be a lot easier, like to film it. Like I didn't think it was going to take as much time to do. I guess I could talk a little bit about things that I was surprised about, because I didn't really have a lot of expectations. So I was surprised at how long it took to like edit videos. And I also wasn't expecting to, like, this probably sounds silly, but before getting on or into Booktube and onto Booktube, I didn't really pay attention to book releases and things like that. And once I started being on Booktube, I was aware of like all the books, not all the books, but all the books that were coming out and what people were talking about. And I just felt very like in the know of the book community. And before I joined Booktube, I didn't have that at all. Like I just read whatever I saw at the bookstore, at the library. I was, and sometimes I would miss that. Like I would miss just walking to a bookstore and picking up a book based on its cover without knowing anything about it. And once you're really into Booktube, that kind of goes away because you just hear so much about different books. And my TBR went from being just like random books that I pick up to like a long list of books that I've heard a lot of things about and want to read. So I was kind of surprised by that, like just the amount of information and like the fact that I would walk into a bookstore and be like, oh, I've heard of that book and that book and that book. That one's supposed to be good. Like that really surprised me. And now that I'm not really in Booktube anymore, temporarily, hopefully, I once again have no idea what books are popular, what people are talking about. And I kind of am re-experiencing that part of my life where I would walk into a bookstore and be able to pick up a book without knowing anything about it. I don't know. That wasn't really an expectation, but there you go.
I think it is. Yeah. Christy, did you fall into the same camp, or were there other things that were more what you thought it would be?
Yeah, I have a couple of things for this question, but firstly, I definitely miss those times of not knowing anything about a book as well. Because I think one of my problems with a lot of books that get really hyped on Booktube is that I end up knowing so much about it before I even start reading it. Like one of the examples that I like to give the most is Six of Crows. Like I feel like I've read Six of Crows, but I haven't read Six of Crows just because of everything that I hear people say about it, how they talk about the characters, how they quote things that the characters say at the end of the series. Like it's not just Booktube, it's all over on Goodreads as well. But also, ironically, one of my favorite things to do when I go to a bookstore is like when I go with my boyfriend and I'm just like, let me tell you about all of these books that I have heard about, but I haven't read and what I know about them.
But do you like that or don't like that? I'm getting mixed messages. You like that you know
like
everything about sexual shows, but
no, I like doing that when we're at the bookstore, but like ultimately I do miss like not knowing anything.
Yeah, I used to do that a lot too, where people would be like telling me about a book, like people that I work with, be like, "Oh yeah, I know a lot about that book," and they'd be like, "Oh, you've read it," and I'd be like, "No, I haven't."
Yeah,
but I like that. I like feeling, I don't know, not like a know-it-all, but just like knowing about a lot of books that I haven't even read.
No, it's okay. You can say it because I
it's fun.
Don't quite do exactly that, Christy. I like I'm just admitting that I do a hybrid of both of the things you just described. But when I go to Barnes and Noble, I'm like, how many of these have I read? And then like pat myself on the back when I go to the fantasy section, or I'm like, that one I've heard about, that one's on my radar. And like it's kind of fun to be like, what have I not heard about at all?
Yeah.
Because I think to your point, Jade, you do start to hear about, you're in the know about basically everything. So then when there's something that you're not in the know about, you're kind of like, what is that? And it's sort of exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes it turns out to be bad and you're like, oh, darn.
That's why I didn't hear about it.
I did a video of me just going to the library specifically looking for books that I hadn't heard anything about just to see. And I did have to sort of branch outside of the typical fantasy that I pick up because I do know so much about upcoming releases and whatnot, or at the very least I've heard about them. So I ended up picking up a sci-fi, like turned out to kind of sort of be fantasy, and then a contemporary romance. I didn't really love either of them. So then there's a part of me that's like, I miss that
the best way.
I miss that feeling, but at the same time, in actuality, it's not the most pragmatic because there's a reason that Booktube is so helpful because it does sort of filter out. You're like, oh, okay, I'm not going to like that. And then know. Now, I will say, especially because I don't know how to say this without sounding like, but I'm like, I have a lot of friends on Booktube now. So I do have conversations. And I always feel weird watching my friends' videos when I can just talk to them. And like, I know not everybody feels the same. Roger, who I'm sure a lot of people know, he very sweetly watches still like a bunch of his friends' videos. And I always feel really bad because I'm like, I just talked to you. And I mean, that's nice. But anyway, so because I chat with friends and stuff like that, I already feel like I hear so much there that I don't want to get additional information. And it's easy when you're talking to a friend to be like, oh, I haven't read that one yet. Don't talk to me about it. You can't really, you can skip ahead in a video and stuff like that. But I so badly, to your point, Christy, don't want to know everything beforehand that especially with new fantasy releases, if I can, as much as possible, just have the synopsis and sort of recreate that experience of I picked it up, I saw the synopsis and I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. Then that's what I want to do, especially because so many people, I don't think necessarily always do it intentionally by any means, but they do sort of absorb so many outside thoughts that you are increasing the amount of bias you have before you even go into the book. And it can go both ways. Maybe you're like, oh, everybody loves this, I think I'll love it too. And you want to love it because everyone else loves it. So then there's like more of a, even if you're not liking it at the beginning, you might push through because you're like, well, everybody says it's good when you might have DNF'd it otherwise. And then some people like to sort of be contradictory, and they're like, well, everybody loves this and I doubt it's as good as everybody says. There's no way it's going to live. And then you kind of start looking for things to be annoyed at because there is a feeling of like, other people just don't see the flaws. Like there's, I think, the attitude that's we can all fall to occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I don't want to accidentally do any of that. I also don't want to take other people's thoughts and act as though they're mine, intentionally or not. I would never do that intentionally, but some people might not really have their own thoughts and just see what other people think. And then especially because, and one thing that's nice that we haven't gotten into is views, but some people really want, and understandably, a lot of people seek validation. They don't want to upset people. So then they're like, what does everybody think? And then they want to tell people whatever they also think. So it's like a feedback loop of like, yeah, exactly. And then you're like, oh, they like me. You're like, well, they like their own thoughts that you just gave to them. And then you kind of keep doing that. So
I try.
Yeah.
For both of you guys. So we talked a little bit about like trying not to know too much about a book before you go into it, which I would try to do, but is not always possible because I'm not so much anymore, but I watched a lot of Booktube back in the day. But my question, or what I was thinking about when you're talking, Elle, was that like what I would sometimes do is after I've read it, but before I film about it, I'll go and watch other people's reviews, because not because I don't know what my own opinions are, but if there's like things that other people are saying that I might want to like include in my thoughts or like respond to in my thoughts. So sometimes I would do kind of like a little bit of research and watch other people's videos about the book to see what other people thought, so I could include that, not so that it would influence me, although maybe it would have, but yeah, I would have already finished reading the book. So in theory, I would already have my own thoughts. Anyways, curious if anybody else does that.
Yeah, I was shaking my head no, not at like, how dare you do that? But because I was kind of preemptively answering your question of no, not anymore. I definitely think I used to sometimes I'd finish a book and I'd be like, or I will say if there's something very upsetting, I'm like, other people have to be annoyed at this, right? And then you kind of want to see like, I'm not the only one, am I? And I think I used to do that more often, and I don't now basically at all. I don't even like going on Goodreads. There's very few exceptions I'll go on to double check release dates. That's mostly it. I try to really avoid seeing, and I do appreciate what you're referencing, because I think there's certain books especially where some content you're like, this feels a little, let's say it's a book that's highlighting an issue that's not necessarily applicable to you but is applicable to other people, or it might be seen as offensive but you're not necessarily the group that would be offended by it. You're like, well, maybe other people really appreciate this depiction, maybe some people will have a problem with it. And the way I see it is that part of my, at this point, job as a reviewer is to like kind of take all that into consideration, but based from the book itself, and then relay. So there have been times where I've read something and thought like, like I read a book recently that I did not like at all. And one of the main characters is a bisexual woman. Christy, I messaged you about it. And I do think that it perpetuated the stereotype that like people who are bisexual are just like constantly frisky, I'll say, to keep it slightly PG, and like they just want to do it with everybody and everything in sight, and you're just like, I mean, that's not the best, like, but maybe there are some women or people just in general who are bisexual that are like, I love this character, but I don't know, because everybody's different, so, and I don't want to speak on behalf of everybody, but it is like, this might be seen as that way if you are somebody who is sensitive to this. So just keep it like in your mind. But I also think I don't want, at the same time, sorry, this is turning into kind of a long point, but at the same time, I don't want to get, this is a weird statement, I don't want to get credit for like what I was saying before. I don't want to take somebody else's thoughts like they're mine. So in that specific instance, if I were to go through and look and see like not that it's easy to be like, Goodreads, this person, are they bisexual? Okay, now I can find it's not like it's filtering the users by their sexuality. But if I were to go through and read all of them and then say those things, it makes me feel like I'm getting credit for their views and thoughts. You know what I mean? Like it's a balancing act, because
and something I want to add to that, which we might talk about this later, but I do think you, as someone who has a much larger platform at this point, you have to think a lot harder about what you're going to say on camera than maybe Christy or I would. Like, I think you have to come at it from a little bit of a different perspective, because your videos are going to reach a lot more people than us. I mean, we're just kind of I don't know what your channel size is at this point, Christy, but I feel like we're just talking to like our little group of people, and so I don't necessarily put as much thought, I think, into those kinds of things, because I don't have to. Nobody's gonna watch my videos.
I do want to try to aim to be mindful, and if I miss the mark, then I miss the mark, and that's one of those, because that is pretty much for me the main and only, to be honest, con in not looking at other people's thoughts ahead of time, is that there are going to be instances where I may very well miss something that other people would have appreciated having a heads up on. And if that's the case, then it's like, you know, I do feel bad about that, but I also never want to essentially intellectually plagiarize. I feel like that's a line that I really don't want to cross because it happens all the time on the internet and I don't want to be a part of it. So that's the one
that's a good
downside for
point.
me.
Yeah.
I feel a little bad because I definitely think that was an interesting point that we discussed, but also I think we kind of strayed a little bit from the idea of expectations and things like that.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you mentioned the fact that like you have to sometimes think through like what am I going to say, because other people, it is very different from just talking to a friend. So would you say there were certain expectations in, did you think you were going to get like a ton of mean comments, or did you think everybody was going to be so nice? Everybody says Booktube is nice. What were your expectations when it came to interactions?
I was expecting to make friends and that everyone would be nice, but also that nobody would see my videos.
I feel like I had the exact opposite. I thought I would make no friends. I thought when people said they made friends, I'm like, they're not real friends. You know, I mean, not that they were lying or that
Right,
I
you
just
just didn't
thought
believe
like
it.
it's not the same as like you're in real life friends. I just didn't think that it would be possible. And I was very wrong about that. I was very pleasantly surprised at how wrong I was about that. I will say, having started my channel mainly talking about the Witcher series did bring in a different audience
Crowd.
than I feel a lot of other booktubers experienced. I
Sure.
remember talking to Michael once about this. He was like, "Oh, I feel like everybody was so nice when I started," and I'm like, "I'm a little jealous." People were terrible. People were they were mean to me, and they were not kind to other people. They had plenty of negative things to say all the time, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh." But I really wanted I loved the story and I wanted to talk about it, and I wanted to have there be a space where other people who weren't unkind and cruel would be like, "Oh, I love it too. I can, be here about it." But I definitely feel that was an instance where the negativity sort of outweighed the few people that were like, "Yay, Witcher." So that was a little unfortunate. And then I feel like it was a little bit of an uphill battle to get out of that. Now I feel like everybody's super nice and so respectful. And it's nice because when the occasional troll pops up, I'm always really pleasantly surprised at how people react to it because it's so different from what you see in other corners of the internet, like reaction channels or whatever other popular things are out there. Not that BookTube's popular, but I definitely feel like how people respond to trolls in my comment section, I'm always like, oh, you guys are, they'll like try to give people benefit of the doubt, or they'll be like, I don't really think that's the situation, and they don't just immediately resort to being terrible. So I'm always like, that's nice to see. I often just ignore if it's a thing now. I'm just like, whatever. Okay. And then move on. Because there's a part of me like, people are starving. So it's like, who cares if somebody's being rude in the comments to me? I don't like when people are rude to other people. That I'm like, no. But if they're being mean to me, I'm just like, okay, you feel the need to say something. Okay, I just, whatever. You said something probably from your phone or your computer. So you're already not really somebody that I am that too concerned about in the grand scheme of life, Anyway, Christy, what's your answer to this?
Sorry, what was the original question? Oh,
Expectations about like interactions,
okay.
whether it be making friends or I know. Sorry, went off in
No,
another
it's okay.
direction.
I think I just forget things so easily. Short attention span. But I didn't really think that I was gonna get that many comments either. Just like a few comments be like, oh, I love that book too. Just, nice comments too. But knowing that the type of comments that other people have gotten when they read certain books, like as you mentioned, Witcher, and I know some other people who have read like Dune, for example, got like really, really terrible comments. It made me kind of like even scared to touch any of those books or series at all, because I'm like, I want it, because when I read something, I want to talk about it on my channel. But if I don't like it, I mean, I like I can't pretend that I did and all that kind of stuff. Going back a little bit back though to, but also looking at the comments on some other videos that are not BookTube, I know, like, those ones are so much worse. Like, I've seen some of those comments. I'm like, every time I open those comment sections, I'm just like, remind me to never open a comment section ever again. I always have to remind myself of that. But going back a little bit to the previous question where you talked about accountability, I feel like that also relates to the expectations that I had going into BookTube as well, because like one of the things that I wanted to do was, okay, like, you know, the TBR, it's going to keep me accountable. It's going to hold me to, it's going to, if I make a video about it, it's going to make me want to stick to it and all that stuff. But one thing that I've discovered about myself is that anytime I force that kind of accountability on myself, it always backfires. So again, like if I feel like I have to stick to a TBR, then it ends up just not being as enjoyable as, like, even if I would have read it anyway, if I didn't make it a list and I didn't make it like a requirement for myself, I would have enjoyed it rather than like forcing myself to be like, you have to read this month.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because I didn't do TBRs on my channel for a really long time. It was always just a retroactive, like, what did I read? And I never posted, like, this is the list of books that I'm reading. And even when I started doing TBRs, it was always like a big list of things that I want to read in the next few months. And always a, like, I'm not going to read all of these, but these are the ones that I'm choosing from, sort of thing. So I never really had that kind of accountability come from a TBR by putting it like online or whatever. But I think a lot of people do. I think I'm the weird one.
Well, it's funny because you are a very planner kind of person.
Yeah.
So it is kind of surprising that that was never part of your.
I'm kind of also a mood reader, so I like to have like a loose TBR, which is why when I started making the videos, I would do it for like big chunks of time, so like 3 months, because I would do them seasonally. And then I like to have, you know, there's so many books on my like forever TBR that I just like, this is the chunk I'm going to focus on. A lot of times it was like driven by, like I said, I'm a mood reader, so driven by the seasons or what other book clubs were going on or buddy reads and things like that.
I do find Shoshana calls it her pile of possibilities. And I think
I
that's
love
a good
that
approach. It's just like, these are the ones that I'm kind of thinking about. I will say, I think as far as like the interaction and accountability part of it, I find TBRs are not as common anymore. I think that BookTube used to be so much more about connecting as a whole with other people with books at the center. And I don't know if it's because of book talk or short form content. I almost feel as though BookTube has segued into, in a lot of ways, being more about entertainment and the actual, because you'll see like so many people stray away from reviews nowadays. And I know there's been conversations for a while about like that side of things, but I do feel like TBRs, people would say, this is what I'm going to be reading. So that there was this expectation of like, oh, okay, this person's going to read these things. Maybe I'll check these things out for myself and then I'll know. Or, oh, okay, I've read that. So I'll definitely want to see in their wrap up what they ended up thinking of it. Or I'm interested in it. So now I want to see what they have to say about it in case maybe I can bump it off my TBR or bump it up on my TBR, that kind of thing. And now it seems as though there are some people that still, of course, like all those things and want that. But the way that BookTube was when I first started, and I think Jade, for you and Christy, you've watched it for a long time and you kind of in and out. I do feel like it used to be a lot more, not formulaic in a bad way, but there was kind of like the set things you did. And I do find some people face, here's like, I guess, an expectation. They feel like they have to do something really creative or they're not bringing anything to the table. And to kind of tie that in with the tech stuff, you can just, if you did want to start a channel, you can just do it for yourself to talk about books and to make friends and not worry about how, like, kind of, you know, Jade, not picking on you, but you don't have to worry about, oh, is anybody going to care about this? You know, you don't have to worry about that. It's just, we all love books. That's why we're here. And yeah, some people succeed because they do kind of lean into the entertainment of it all, which is fine too. That's its own form of content. But if somebody wants to start, they don't have to worry about that, I don't think. Yeah. But really quick, with this question, it seems as though the both of you would say no, maybe, or like depends, maybe sometimes depends on where you are in life. What would you say would be your direct answer to this prompt?
My direct answer would be no, because it's more going to take away from your reading time. But I would recommend watching Booktube. I think for me, watching Booktube motivates me to read way more than creating content.
Would you say that as well, Christy? Oh, sorry, Jade.
Yeah, I just had a thought pop up after that. Just like right now, or for the past couple of years, I haven't been watching a lot of Booktube, and my reading has been so much slower. And part of that is life stuff as well. But this year, I feel like I've been getting into more of a groove, but I don't have this like long list of books that I'm really looking forward to, that I'm like dying to read, because I'm not watching people talk about books all the time and putting those ideas in my head. I mean, I have a TBR and a list, but they're all like backlist, and like I just don't know what people are like. When I watched so much Booktube, I wanted to read what people were talking about, and now I don't know what people are talking about, so like I'm less motivated to read for whatever reason.
Yeah, one of my tricks for getting out of a reading slump is just watch Booktube videos. Because like after I see a Booktube video where people talk about books and they're super excited and like gush about it, I'm like, okay, now I want to read that. So it brings me out of a slump like right away. As long as, again, like I'm not feeling that burnout from feeling like I have to read. But to answer that question, I do think it depends. It depends on what your goal is to make a Booktube video or Booktube channel is. And like nothing I'm saying is new. I feel like a lot of people who make these kinds of like, should you start a Booktube channel videos have like touched on this. And even if you think like that you're not going to fall under the influence of like, I won't care about subscribers and number of views, and I'll make videos that I want to make and read what I want to read. There is always going to be that pressure, and you have to be like strong-willed to resist it. And I unfortunately am quite weak-willed, so I fell into that a little bit. But it's like, just know yourself, and as long as you're still enjoying what you're doing.
Yeah, I think like if you're enjoying the process and enjoying the people that you talk to, if you put too much pressure on yourself or it becomes like a chore, then no one's going to have fun watching that either.
I think the biggest motivation, if you get really invested in it, doesn't come from views. It comes from the friends we make along the way. I think when you have, because that's why so many people do get into it, is because they want to connect. And when you start making those friendships, you start doing buddy reads, and you start just chatting in general with other people, and then you have friendships, and then it's like, this is my friend who also likes books, and it's almost easier to have it be a part of your life, not because of the making book content, but because there are other people in your life that also share this hobby. I think that's a big thing for a lot of people in any hobby, is when they have no one else to share it with or help kind of, it's like accountability buddies almost, except for it's not a spoken thing. It's just, oh, what are you reading? Oh, I just read this the other day. You just kind of, it becomes a part of your life because your friends are a part of your life. And thus the conversations kind of end up eventually getting to that place. I do find that when people are more concerned about views, and when people are more concerned about, I have to get content up and all that stuff, and it's got to be stuff people really like, and when they start thinking in that way, that's when the reading goes out the window. And not to try to frame what you were talking about kind of negatively, Christy, because I didn't mean it to be a negative thing, but I feel like that's what you've articulated in that video of yours, and you jokingly just said you were weak-willed, but you're not. I feel like it's really common for people, because
you put so much time into it.
That's what I was just going to say. You put so much effort in, and then you put it up, and it's, if it feels like metaphorically crickets are chirping, you're kind of like, oh, because that's the whole reason you made it, is because to be watched. I think there's a difference between, I made something because I want to connect, or I want to offer something helpful potentially to other people. Like, here's my recommended reading order for this really long series or something. You do that to help or to inform or to entertain, whatever the case may be, or to connect. But if it becomes about like me, I want to be validated all the time, then you're like, well, that's not really about books anymore. And I think that's where it can kind of fall off for a lot of people. I feel like this is a good segue into money. Did you think you'd make any? Have you made any of it? And did Booktube make you actually spend more than what you ended up making? Because it's a rare person that goes into Booktube thinking like, I'm going to make so much money off of this. and a very incorrect person. But I'm curious as to how both of you would answer this.
I mean, probably. Okay, so I did make some money, but not much. And it took a very long time before I was monetized, like years of making videos before I was monetized. And at this point, I've lost my monetization because I haven't been active, and YouTube is just making money off my videos. So that's fun. But yeah, I mean, eventually I did start making pennies on the hour that I spent, but it didn't last long. And it's not, I wouldn't say it was like worth it in that sense at all. And I also, one of the reasons actually I wanted to start my channel was because like so many people film in front of a wall of books like Elle, which is what a lot of people do. That's how people know that you're talking about books, right? And I went into Booktube wanting to show that you can read a lot and have a channel without buying a lot of books and using the library a lot. Obviously, a lot of people do that. But as you can see, I have a very tiny, I have other books somewhere, but like I've always had just a very small shelf in my videos, if any books at all. And that's because I get a lot of my books from the library, or I use some like subscriptions like Scribd, which is now Everand, or Kindle Unlimited, things like that, to be able to get access to books. But I don't actually buy a ton of books when I can avoid it.
Is that the case for you, Christy? I mean, you have your shelves too.
Yeah, but I had those shelves before I started Booktube, although Booktube did like watching Booktube did influence like having a really, I love your shelves. So I'm like, I want that. But anyway, that's the whole other point. As I mentioned, like I bought a camera when I like started making videos. So obviously like right off the bat, I already spent more. But yeah, I remember being so excited about my first dollar after monetization, which again, like also took like a long time to get there. And then I know like I'm not gonna be rich from Booktube. Like it's definitely not gonna be like a source of income. Like for me, it's literally like cents and pennies. But I feel like another thing is like I'm constantly like making fun of myself for this. But like just seeing that number, that like, oh, I have the potential to earn money, it almost puts like even more pressure on you, because like you said, Jade, you have to keep making videos or else you lose your monetization. And obviously the more videos you make and the more views they get, the higher that number is going to be. So I feel like instead of pressuring me to make more videos and to film more, it ended up doing the opposite thing to me, where I'm just like, this is too much pressure, I can't handle this. So I'm gonna, and then that's when I like had to like took a step back and like reevaluated like what I was doing with like my relationship with reading, and hence that's why like again also why I stepped back a little bit from Booktube.
I do find when I've watched people talk about or heard people talk about why they have stopped making videos, sometimes like permanently, they're like, this had a lot of negative effects on me. It is a lot of what you just described. It's that they couldn't get away from seeing the analytics, and it wasn't about books anymore, or whatever their goals were when they started. It was they were getting sucked into all those other things. And I get it, because I have a desktop now. And a lot of times I'll do stuff on my laptop, but it's getting old and like sometimes it flips out when I try to export or whatever. But or not really export, AirDrop to the computer. But when I have to do stuff on my desktop, because it's so much bigger, it will show you like likes to dislikes ratio, like the percentage. So like it actually has that on the screen because it's so big. So when I open up YouTube on my desktop, I'll literally do this as I'm scrolling. If I need to like fill out the description bar or something like that, because that's how much I never look at I don't look at any of it. I hate it. I hate seeing the analytics because of what you're describing. It like gets in your
Yeah.
head.
You've
And
said that
so-
before, and I don't know how you do that. Like, I used to check my analytics every day, which is not healthy. Like, I don't recommend that either. But like, I've always been super impressed that you literally just like don't look at
I'll
it.
see like views because I'm like, you know, just to see like, is this like I was shocked at the one video I made this year about like why do so many of the popular books feel the same. I did not expect. It's like I put so much more effort into so many of my other videos, and then that one,
Isn't that how it always happens? The ones you
yeah,
work
of
the
course.
hardest on.
The ones that you sit down, you're like, so anyway, I just had some thoughts, and like that does
ones
great.
like this is so the ones that are this is so creative. It's like so unique, and no one's ever done. And then it's like not that
Yeah, I
many views, and
remember-
you make the most generic video ever, and it blows up.
Yeah, I remember when I made a video of like giving book recommendations based off of like Onion headlines or whatever. The Onion is a satire site.
Okay.
So it was like a really, I know, before we started, we were talking about food. So no, Jade, I'm not talking about literal onions. But the Onion is a satire site and they have really stupid headlines and stuff like that.
yeah.
So I was giving book recommendations based off of Onion headlines or something like that. Because I'm like, I think the Onion's funny. And I thought that was like a goofy way to combine those things and like didn't do well at all. But I was like, oh yeah, that's okay. I had fun with it. But yeah, I hate, and like, I don't even know what's included because I don't even want to see. When there was a day I was on my desktop, I saw that some people disliked my YouTube short of Luna Bear, my dog, with zoomies in the morning. And I'm like, who would dislike that? What's wrong with you? Wow. But like, what a sad existence you have. A happy dog is upsetting to you. So anyway, I can't look at it because as I stated before, there are so many more important things on the planet than whether somebody like likes my video or like as many people watching this as they usually do. Or what I'm just like, I can't. It'll actually get in the way of both reading and making videos for me. It will impact me. So Christy, if you think you're weak-willed, I guess I am too, because I'm like, I can't even look. I don't even want to see it.
No, I think that's a strong will to not.
Yeah, that is strong will to not give into your curiosity.
If I look, I mean, it's the same as like looking at reviews. If you've written a book, I don't look at all. I don't even want to see it.
Yeah.
And it's like, if for whatever reason I need to link, because it's very rare that I mention my own book, but if I do and I need to like link it, I think I usually have it as like part of the general like
Standard.
where you can find me, you know. But if I'm doing like a separate thing, I'm like, I don't even want to search this right now. Like I hate it. So, but I'm that way with.
You need to save the link in like a file so that you don't have to look it up each time.
That is what I need to do.
That's what I would do. I have a weird. I use it's called Notion. It's kind of like a fancy spreadsheet thing. And for each book, I would put in like all the links of like where, like the Goodreads link, the Amazon, like all of it. I would save it so that if I ever talk about the same book again, all that information is right there and I can just copy and paste it.
That is a good idea. The only downside is I feel I am often talking about new things. So I kind of run out of, it's almost faster to just really quick get the links. But anyway, back to the money thing. I mean, if anybody thinks like, that I don't want to give the impression that I'm somehow like, this job sucks because I have to put so much into it and I don't make very much money, because I'm like, I get to work from home and I get to read, you know, like I don't like when people who do YouTube for a living get to a point where they like forget what everyday jobs are like. Because I'm like, hey, you know, some people have like a boss they can't stand, or their commute is terrible, or whatever. Like, people deal with stuff they don't want to have to deal with, and you get to like sit in front of a camera and talk. So, you know, but it doesn't make very much money. I feel like I make less than everybody else I know, and I'm not upset about it. It's just like pros versus cons. You kind of got to outweigh. Other YouTubers make so much money, so it's not that.
If you want to make money on YouTube, you should go into a different type of like video than YouTube or than Booktube, like lifestyle or makeup or things like that.
People value very much, I think, authenticity on Booktube, which I think you should value it in general, but on Booktube especially, I think people care quite a bit. And if it seems like you're just doing something for views or for money, I think people pretty quickly
figure it out.
Yeah, they check out, because that's not, it's not a space where people only seek. I know I was talking about before that sometimes it's kind of getting into a realm of being less interactive and being more entertainment, because I think a lot of YouTube kind of ends up at that point. But I would still say that people, when they come to Booktube, are looking for book-centered content, and that's not necessarily the money maker. They want to see what you have to say.
Yeah. I think it's interesting you were saying that like people now feel pressured to like make creative content, because I remember back in the day it was all about like everybody makes TBRs and wrap ups, and like these are the staple videos, but you don't have to make the staple videos. You can do creative things, and it's now like everybody's doing creative things and not as many people are doing the staple content. It's interesting.
It is funny because I think that if somebody is liked, no matter what they do, people will be like, I love that you just stick to the basics, you know, or so if finding your person, I think, matters.
There's an audience for every kind of content out there, is how I think.
Yeah. Were there any final thoughts that either of you had about the expectations versus realities of Booktube? Anything that we didn't really touch on that you wanted to mention?
There was one thing that you mentioned earlier about not just like not wanting to know about a synopsis about a book going in, but like anyone else's thoughts. And I'm sorry if I feel like I'm complaining all the time in this video. I'm just like speaking from my experience, you know, and this is how I learn and go through character development. But yeah, like, you know, that's one thing that I learned about. I feel like I learned so much about myself just from making Booktube videos and going through all of this stuff. Yeah, I do get very easily influenced, and sometimes I will hear like a thought about a book, and then if I'm like before I read it and then after I read it, it's like it's hard to like even tell myself sometimes, like, how do I really feel about this book? Is this really how I feel about this book, or is it just because I heard someone else say this thing about it? So that's why I stopped watching like fantasy Booktube. Really, I used to watch books like exclusively fantasy Booktube because like those are the books that I'm interested in. So those are the only videos that I watch. But I had to like stop because I'm like there are too many of these books that I haven't read yet, and I'm being like pre-influenced before I get a chance to pick them up myself. So, like I find myself like more enjoying the videos by people who read completely different books from me. They read something, and I'm like, I'm never gonna pick this book up, but it's still fun to hear them talk about it.
That's fun. I mean, I get to have that in real life with my husband because we read completely different things. So yeah, I get to, well, and I will say what you were both touching on. This is, I guess, my last statement for the video. We were talking about prep time and if you're gonna, how long it takes to talk about a book, those sorts of things. One, Sean and I talk to each other about what we're reading all the time. So I do feel like I almost incidentally get practice talking about the book and also working through my thoughts as I'm reading it, if it is something I don't fly through right away. But also I do sit and think about my thoughts on something. That's a weird statement. I think about my thoughts, but I mean, I think about how I feel and how I'm going to relay those things to a point where I will lose sleep because of course, right, you sit down to go to bed and you're like, what's the most embarrassing thing that's happened in my life? I guess that's going to be what I think about right now. Also, I forgot that I needed to get groceries. So, like, you do all the like dumb things pop into your brain when you go to sleep, or at least for me, because I don't sleep well. But like, you sit down to sleep and then all these thoughts come into your head. And so oftentimes I'll sit and be like, okay, how am I going to talk about, I'm filming tomorrow. What should I need to think through how I'm going to talk about this book. And it sort of helps cut down on the stumbling time. But I suppose I didn't expect that would be how I thought it would just be like talking to your friends. Like it just comes out because you talk about, but when you talk to your friends, or at least me anyway, I sound stupid. I've listened back to messages I've sent my friends and I'm just like, oh my gosh, the amount of times I said like, and I repeat myself all the time. I never know when to shut up. So
No,
sometimes
I
thinking
feel
through.
that completely because I ramble on and on and on when I'm talking about books to my boyfriend. And this is like also why he's like, you should do a booktube channel because you
You
love
need
talking
somebody
about
to
these
talk
books.
to.
Well, he'll still listen to me. But it's so different because like when I sit down in front of a camera, I'm like suddenly the words all just disappear from my head. And sorry, just to add on another thing, and another thing is I feel like as when I'm reading and I know I'm gonna make a video to talk about it, I'm like, okay, I gotta think about like what I'm gonna say about this book because I don't want to just say like I liked it or I didn't like it. It's gotta be like what I liked about it and what I didn't. So I would like pay extra attention. I'll be like, okay, these are the characters and the themes and blah 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 blah, which is really good sometimes because then you're like you pay really close attention to it and you feel like you like can deeply analyze the book and absorb it much better. But then sometimes I also just want to read just to like have fun and I want to just at the end of the day say, yeah, I liked it or no, I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. Like the reading experience is different if you go into a book knowing that you're going to talk about it because you can't help but think about what you're going to talk about and kind of think about it ahead of time as you're reading. Versus if you were not planning on making a video, you don't have to put that kind of thought into it and it goes by like it's not as distracting. So yeah.
I will say it does help me remember books to talk about them. When I was in school learning about how to teach violin to people, they would always emphasize that the best way to retain information is to teach it to someone else. So whenever I was teaching a student something, I would then tell them, okay, now explain to me as if I have no idea how to do that. And then immediately they're like, and then like they realize like, oh, I don't know. Because you definitely like people don't realize when they hear something how little of it actually settles.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with something to end on a positive, because I feel like a lot of it, it's like it's a lot of time and effort.
But it's fun.
Yeah, but it's fun and you make friends and there's that part of it that's nice. But I definitely feel I'd like to believe that I'm a better reviewer than I was when I started and that I do pay more attention. And I love to write, so I do feel like I'm constantly like, why did it work? What worked about this? Why did I love it so much? And like kind of conceptualizing those things. I think that reading helps a lot with that, but also I just retain it. Now it's different for other people because Christy, you were talking about how sometimes you just feel like you have to read so much that you can get to the next thing and then you can make content about it and that kind of spiral. But for me, I find I remember books so much better because I'm going to talk about them. And if I don't, like, there are times where if I didn't read, if it was something I read and didn't talk about or didn't talk about shortly after I read it, I'm like, what happened again? So I definitely think Booktube, for me, has had that positive effect. It helps when reading series too, I will say.
Yeah, I kind of thought that would be the case for me. Like this would be a cool way. Like I said, it was kind of a diary of my reading and I could always go back and see what I thought. But in most of my reviews and wrap ups, I'm keeping it really general and spoiler free. So that doesn't help. Like my spoilery videos definitely help. I can rewatch and remember things, but not so much my like more general videos. But one thing I've been thinking about as a reason to get back into Booktube is because my memory has definitely been worse for the things that I've read. So having I used to at least just remember my general feelings on a book, and now I can't even remember those. So I'm like, I should start making videos so I can remember what I thought about the book. But yeah, because I don't go into spoilery details, I don't necessarily remember the details of the book better, but I would remember my general feelings on the book more than now when I don't remember anything.
Yeah, and as you guys have mentioned, all the people you meet and all the friends you make on Booktube, that has definitely been really nice. I will say that starting Booktube has allowed me to meet a lot of people who read read the same things as me, and then we can like, especially if they have already read something and then I read it, and then I can just like spam them with my thoughts. I've been reading The Wheel of Time. I started really reading The Wheel of Time recently, and I've just been like spamming Jade's Discord with just like every time a single thought pops into my head, I'm like, gotta write this down.
It's awesome.
I am not the person to message about that. So
yeah, I think that if you're going to get into Booktube, you want to do it because you want to talk about the books that you read, and you want to make connections for friends or with friends and find people who read similar things as you. Those are the reasons to get into Booktube. If you're doing it for views or money, it's not going to feel as rewarding because those things might not happen for you. They might. Maybe you'll hit it big. Who knows? But it rarely happens that way. You got to do it for the love of books and making connections with other people. That's what's going to keep you motivated to keep going, because it's not easy.
It is time consuming, but it's worth it for the friends that we make.
Yeah, it's fun.
It happens for me. It's funny because there's been a couple of times that I have friends who have become close enough friends that they end up meeting family members, and it is always funny for family members to be like, "So how did you two meet?" And it's like, "Oh, like we talk about books together on Voxer." You know, like, it's people don't realize how close you can become.
Yeah,
Interest, but it really can propel you toward a wonderful friendship, which I have had so many form as a result of Booktube. So even though it can be time consuming and it is a lot, it is, in my opinion, it's worth it. But also there's nothing wrong if it doesn't end up being worth it for other people. It doesn't make you less of a reader. It doesn't mean you're bad at reviewing things. It's just life sometimes doesn't have it in the cards, and that's okay too. But on that sort of bittersweet note, this is a lot of fun. I do, of course, obviously miss the both of you as humans, but also, you know, like you making content and things like that. But also, whatever's best for your lives is what I want you to do. Any final, like, quick last-minute thoughts, or do you think we're pretty good?
I'm good. I appreciate having this chat with you guys.
Yeah, me too. I have definitely genuinely made good friendships through Booktube. Even my husband admits it. Like, I have a small Patreon Discord that I started the year that I had my baby, and I knew I was going to be offline for a little while. And like, it's a small group, but we've been together for like in this Discord for over 3 years now. And there's some of my best friends. And even my husband will be like, those people aren't just internet friends. They're like your real friends. And like Elle said, like, she's come to visit me. Like, we've met in person. I've met some other people. Like, you can make real, genuine friendships online.
If it wasn't for that darn kid of yours, I'd probably see
know.
more often. Just kidding.
But I mean, I never would have thought that it was possible. Like, I don't know. That sounds cheesy, but I have genuinely some really good friends through Booktube. And if you're going to go into it looking for friendships, it's possible. It is.
I like how this turned into like, well, maybe we love each other. Yeah. Well, anyway, be sure to check out our merch, as all profit goes to charity, as does the AdSense from the channel in general. Oh, how cute. But I'm going to go eat my dinner now. My husband crawled over to me and brought me. So if you saw me kind of doing this earlier, that's why. But anyway, thanks so much to Jade and Christy for joining. And we'd love to see whatever else you want to add to the conversation. But have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.